Are schools or teachers liable if they withhold information about a student's chosen name and pronouns from that student's parents?
It's a great question. And I will say that it literally gets asked in every single training that we do. So you're not alone in sort of trying to figure out how to navigate, that those situations where, a student is out, but or out at school, but not out at home, and the parents don't know. And this, students saying, please don't tell my parents. Yeah, they're absolutely. So I guess first I'll say there's nothing in the law that prevents or precludes a school from using the name and pronouns at school that the student goes by and requests, regardless of the age of the student. Best practice is to use the name and pronouns that students go by, again, regardless of whether or not parents are informed. And part of that is because, a good chunk of it is because we have really good research that shows that when we use the name and pronouns that transgender students go by in a consistent way, that things like the increased rates of anxiety and depression, and even suicidality that we see among our transgender students are mitigated. Sometimes so much so that it's becomes the same as cisgender students. So it has a huge impact when we use the name and pronouns that students go by. So I always have I've got here are the 5 reasons why it's important to do this. So those are the first 3. The next one is that, you want to, so you've got the research, the State Board of Education guidance supports it also. So you've got State Board of Education guidance that's saying, best practice is to use the name and pronouns that students go by and to only inform parents on a case-by-case basis and sort of really taking into consideration the needs of the student, the well-being of the student. We don't know. There may be a really specific reason why parents are not informed. It might not be a safe environment. The kid might not have a bed to sleep in that night if they come out to their parents. And so we want to be really cautious of that. We may be causing unintentional harm by telling a parent. Another reason is that my guess, I have yet to find a school whose policy is different from what I'm about to describe, is that you don't actually have a policy about using the name and pronouns that students go by when it comes to any student. That your practice is that when a kid comes to you and says, I know it says my legal name is Robert, but I really go by Bob, that you don't contact the parents and say, hey, your kid's telling me they go by Bob, but it says Robert here on this form. Is that okay with you? Your practice is to use the name that the kid says, that this is how they're referred to. And that it sounds like for most districts, when this comes up, that doing it differently would be outside of their normal practice, that they would be treating transgender students differently than they're treating all other students. And then the last thing is Title IX supports you in using the name and pronouns that students go by. And we've been working with Troon, which is a law firm that represents most districts in the state. And they've been really clear to say that if you can say that you're acting in the best interest of the student, that you are on very firm legal ground when it comes to using names and pronouns, and that there's a lot of evidence to support why that is what's in the best interest of your students. I know that there are districts that say you have to have parent permission. I see somebody drop that in the chat. There is nothing that requires a district to do that. And in fact, I would be very cautious about requiring that, because you could be putting kids into harm's way without unintentionally. You may have really good reasons or thoughtful reasons, and doing so could potentially put your students in harm's way. We have absolutely seen situations come up where, kids are outed at home through a process like this, that the school has good intentions, but has outed a kid, and they come to school either not having had a place to sleep last night or with, bruises on their body.